We'd like to call the work session to order. I know Monica Ross Williams is on her way, and I haven't heard from Jimmy, I don't know. And Larry Doe has a flu. The first item on the agenda is the presentation by Paul Schutt, Concentrate Media Proposal. And he has just if you would give your name and just address for our company.
Paul Schutt with Issue Media Group, right?
Is it on green?
Green? Okay, there we go. All right. Paul Schutt, the CEO of Issue Media Group. We're based out of Detroit, Michigan. So just give me
Sorry.
No problem.
Okay. If you would say, come on. Just get on. So you stay here. All right.
Hi. All right. So we are an online news organization. We were founded about 13 years ago in Detroit. We now have publications in a number of places throughout the country, as far west as Denver, as far south as Tampa Bay, as far east as Philadelphia. And we have a number of publications, including Concentrate Media here in Washtenaw County. Our work actually came out of an observation that we made about local media in this region, but also all over the country, that local media seemed largely focused on loss. We noticed whenever there was job loss, crime, scandal, all of this was being really well covered. And if you think back to 12 years ago in Detroit at the time, some of the observations we made at the time were like, the mayor was on his way into prison, the city was sliding into bankruptcy, the auto industry had laid off a couple 100,000 people. So we were trying to figure out what was going to happen next in the community, and the only way we figured out how to do it was to really follow the investments and the money that was being invested in the city at the time. So the idea that we had was, what if we could scoop up the journalists that were being laid off by the local newspapers, and instead of assigning them to go find crime, what if we assigned them to go find all the investments being made in the community? We also didn't have at the time, a name for the type of journalism we were doing until we were introduced to a journalist at the New York Times named David Bornstein. Bornstein had been at the Times about 20 years, and what he was sharing with us in an interview was that he became very frustrated. He saw it as his job for the New York Times to help readers of the New York Times understand the challenges cities were facing. So he was often writing about the problems that cities were facing, and along the way he'd meet some of the most remarkable people on the planet who were addressing those problems, but he was rarely ever writing about them. So his frustration led to the development of a curriculum for the New York Times newsroom called Solutions Journalism, that all of these problems he was writing about had people who were waking up every day to address these problems. So we do address problems in communities, but what we're often looking at are through the lens of who are the people impacting those issues and moving towards solutions. The other thing that we've done to respond to how media is changing over time is it's continuing to become shorter and shorter form. And so this is an example of a piece that we did that we're trying to figure out, how do we take longer, complex issues? So this is a piece we did in Detroit where we took one neighborhood, Corktown, we took one block, and we took one side of the street, and we went back 10 years. And 10 years ago on this block, there was really only one business. It was called LJ's Lounge. Everything else, the roofs had all been burned off, until a young man bought the building down at the end, rehabbed it with friends and family, opened up Slow's Barbecue. And since then, I'm sure if you've been on this block, you'll see all the different investments have been made. And really what we did is we wanted to show how these small incremental changes accumulate into full transformation. And this is how we're starting to approach coverage of communities. So this program on the ground actually started in Philadelphia about 5 years ago, almost 6 now. And it was in a neighborhood called Germantown. And Germantown, if you're familiar with Philadelphia, is kind of an emerging neighborhood, not a hip and up and coming neighborhood, but very important. They approached us and asked if we wanted free office space. And it was this building in the center you'll see. The building had sat vacant for 9 years. We went in, and actually the CDC had rehabbed it. Immediately they rehabbed this, they rented the second and third floor, but they could not get this first floor rented. And so they asked if we would just like to take it over for free. Just activate it, turn the lights on, do anything. So we went over and talked with them, and we talked with other neighborhoods in the community. And really what we ended up finding is that many of the neighborhoods in this community have started to feel like news deserts. that the only time they're being covered is when the police scanner goes off or there are, scandals in the neighborhood. And so we had this idea of what if we could take the journalists that we had and embed them in this neighborhood for a 6 or 12-month period of time. And we did this as a pilot last year in 2017 in Ypsilanti, and what we'd like to now do is expand it to include the township. And that's kind of what this discussion is about, is how do we take some of these principles that we're using in journalism and apply them in an embedded model to where we come into the community and we begin finding the people, the projects, all the innovation that's happening here in the township, and try and help people understand what's happening next here. Again, through the lens of solutions journalism. And our two goals are, with this coverage, could we help increase an understanding in the community? And therefore, could that understanding increase investment? What we've learned about markets over and over, our investors want transparency. They want to see what's happening in the market. And so the way that we do this embedded work, we're actually now doing this in a number of cities around the country. We've done 8 neighborhoods in Philly and 4 in Detroit and a lot of places. As we actually dedicate full-time journalists, in this case, Brianna Kelly. We actually hired her. She was with the AP before this in Chicago for a number of years, moved to Ypsilanti, and then we also have our engagement manager, Veronica. And they immediately begin convening and holding meetings and asking people, what are the stories that are not being told in Ypsilanti Township? What are the misconceptions about the township? And from those stories, we also ask, if there are 3 things that need to move forward for this community to get to the next level, what are they? Housing, education, what are they? And then we begin convening people around those issues and again asking, what are the things that people are working on? What are people doing to improve those conditions? We also require that Brianna attends weekly meetings all over the community. So this would be all over Ypsilanti and Ypsilanti Township. So it could be any weekly event, just to go to where people are having these conversations, where we can find these stories. And as we find these stories, we do stories about those individuals. And this is actually from the Osborne neighborhood in Detroit. I'm going to give you some examples from different cities, of course. And really what we found is some of these people that we are covering are a really big deal in their community, but have literally no profile across the region. And so as we're covering them, you'll notice that we photograph them in a way that kind of honors their work. A good example is a piece that we did in the last few months about Melvin Parson, who's doing the program where We the People Growers Association. This is a piece that we did that got over 13,000 people it reached. It's here in Ypsilanti Township. And this program actually was picked up by the county and now I believe is receiving investment to continue to expand it to other parts of the county. And again, I think he's somebody that not everyone is talking about, but we think he's doing really important work. We also hold speaker events. This was actually in the Soulsville neighborhood of Memphis. Soulsville is not often held up as a best practice for many neighborhoods, but in this case, we wanted to have an event where we had about 150 people from all over the region who came out to talk about the remarkable work that's happening. We're doing similar work here in Ypsilanti and Ypsilanti Township is our hope. And what we found is when people came to this event, we left little surveys on the chairs, and only about 50% of the people who attended this event had actually ever been to Soulsville. And so we started realizing that there were a lot of gaps in understanding. And so we also even started a video series to help people really see what's going on. In the past 5 months, as part of this on-the-ground program that we've started in Ypsilanti that we'd like to expand, we've already done 4 videos of this type as well. We also do investor tours where we'll fill one of the kind of nicer coach buses with a number of organizations. When we did this in Soulsville, we had 5 foundations, local and national. We had 4 news organizations, 4 on the bus, 1 in a news van following. We had 5 banks on the bus and others. And we took them to 15 site visits throughout the community to show them what it's really like. And when we did, the surveys that we got back said 90% of the people who were on this tour dramatically changed their views of that community. And when we say that we're trying to increase investment, this can come in a number of different forms. It doesn't exclusively mean private sector development that can often lead to gentrification, for example. This is an example of a program that we covered again in Memphis called Lifeline to Success. This was about Pastor DeAndre Brown, created a program for gentlemen who were coming back out of prison, coming back into the community, and they were organized into blight brigades, and they would have 5 gentlemen at a time take on a house, secure it, and transform it in one day. and it was a brilliant program. He's been running it for a few years. We did a story about it. We did a video about it. He actually took this video and this story to City Council in Memphis and was requesting $50,000. And that for that $50,000, he would properly staff it. When he got to City Council, they awarded him $200,000. And this program became a model for the rest of Memphis and is now being replicated. Now, again, he did the work. All we did was help him tell his story. He came back to us, told our funders as well. He would not have had the resources to go out and do a video that told the story of this program. And so when we say we're trying to increase the kind of communications capacity of the community, it means all different folks in the community. So this is an example of how we hope to see increases in investment as well. In the first few months, this is one of the quotes that we got back. A lot of times how we measure the impact of our work is we actually go back and we interview people we've interviewed 3 months later and say, did something come out of this? What was the result of this? And this is one we got from Becky Alexander, which her response was really, we wouldn't be getting any of these stories out right now about Ypsilanti if it wasn't for on the ground. And these are a number of other quotes where there's not enough coverage of the Ypsilanti area, and Concentrate helps, and so forth. So we're looking right now at how we could expand the program that's been exclusively in Ypsilanti to include the township. And in the first 5 months of the program, we reached a little over 300,000 people. We were just actually having a conversation about how as we cover different stories, they're picked up by other media. So to give you an example, we have a program with WEMU. All the stories that we do are also then picked up by WEMU. They have actually trained up our journalists to be on-air talent as well. So after they produce it online, our person goes on and interviews the story subject online as well. This also is a list of all the organizations that are currently sharing the on-the-ground content in Ypsilanti, which they would continue, we believe, sharing to include the Ypsilanti Township stories as well. So it really covers a pretty wide group of folks doing, we think, important work in the communities. And so I guess, finally, our goal is to, one, help increase awareness of what's actually happening here in Ypsilanti Township, address the news desert problem that we believe to be real and that we've certainly received some feedback that it may be, with a goal of hopefully having this coverage result in an increase of investment. It could come from philanthropic partners, for-profit, nonprofit, increased lending from banks, and so forth. And very briefly, these are the partners right now. We've organized a coalition to make this happen, and we're looking to raise about $120,000, and we are about $20,000 short right now, and that is why we've come to the township to see if they'd like to participate as part of the coalition. The names that are in italics on the bottom are folks in addition that we're currently talking with. Everyone else above the italicized groups are all currently contracted and on board. So there are some other folks that we're still talking to, AATA, St. Joe's. We just applied for an Old National Bank grant as well. So we're expecting to get to this target. The program has already kicked off. We already started in January, and we're continuing in February. So we'd love to see if the township would like to be part of it and help expand our work to come here.
Questions? Comment?
Chair.
Yes, Trustee Rowe.
Thank you for coming, and that all sounds wonderful. Like, it's exciting just to hear about it. But I did just have a question. If it expanded to the township, would it still be called On the Ground Ypsilanti, or would it differentiate between the township and Ypsilanti, or not really?
So we are using probably the broadest name in this case, which would be Ypsilanti, which actually does, right now we've already done a little bit of coverage of the township. It would be tagged as Ypsilanti Township ongoing, but we probably would leave the brand as it is if that's acceptable.
I was reading the actual agreement, and it talked about having ads.
Yeah.
So what does that mean exactly?
Absolutely. So what will happen is the way that the program works, the easiest way to understand how our agreements work is very similar to National Public Radio. So if you've ever been driving along and heard coverage of entrepreneurship made possible support by the Kauffman Foundation, what's actually happening in that relationship is someone like Kauffman focuses all their energy on one issue, entrepreneurship, and they go to NPR and they say, we don't feel like the media is covering this topic very well. Would you increase coverage? And NPR says, absolutely. We'll assign more journalists. We'll do more stories, give more airtime. but it needs to remain editorially independent. This is something I know we talked about in the past. And so the reality is you can't assign, review, or approve the stories, but as the stories are coming out about Ypsilanti Township, you do also get branding and advertising to go adjacent to it, much like that acknowledgement that you hear on NPR, made possible with support from. So you can use that ad space in any way you'd like. You can use it to produce you can point people to annual reports or to any meetings you have coming up. Any way that you'd like to use it, you can swap out. You can have 2 or 3 ads running at a time. And any stories that we have running within the On the Ground program, your content will appear next to.
Do you sell advertisement on your website as well?
We really don't.
Good.
Yeah, no.
No, that is good, because you can get inundated.
Yeah, and again, the only way that your brand would appear is if your partner is one of the partners. And we have found that advertising is probably doing more to hurt news right now because it's kind of cheapening it and chasing clicks and things like that. So we're trying to kind of take a little bit different approach.
And On the Ground, Ypsilanti is a registered LLC, is it? Registered some sort of?
Yeah, it's Concentrate, and this is kind of a brand that runs within Concentrate. So, yeah.
Okay, so.
And there is also a dedicated email that will come out every month. It will come out, Concentrate comes out every single week to a whole group of subscribers. It also reaches lots of people on, obviously, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere else. And then we also have a dedicated On the Ground section.
So could you put Ypsilanti area, or is that too hard to?
Sure, we can do that.
I'm just asking.
Yeah. I don't think anyone would mind. I think people probably would shorthand it still spoken, but it could still be there in words.
Yeah.
We're not against it.
Other comments?
Madam Chair? Yes, I just want to say, similar to what Trustee Rowe said, that this is exciting. It's something that we've all talked about previously, many of times, where a lot of bad news coverage comes out of Ypsilanti. There's a lot of good things, and so I'm definitely glad that you came and presented this to us. I work at Fort Rossonville, UAW Local 898. Hopefully, one of your journalists can come and do a story over there at UAW, and so we can get some good press coverage as well, right here in the township. This is a good thing, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I will add to your point about how we get story ideas. We hold what are called editorial advisories, and we've had the conversation. We'd have one dedicated to the township, where we'd ask you to fill a boardroom with people who have story ideas. Could be residents, could be businesses, UAW, and we bring our journalists in, and we also bring in other news organizations like WEMU, and we have a big brainstorming session. What are the stories that aren't being told? What are some of the misconceptions? And then your story ideas get connected to the journalists, and they go out and pursue them. And most of these stories, if not all of them, are longer form journalism. So 800 to 1,200 words is typical for us. So these are not the 100 to 200 word like news hits. These are longer form. They typically have at least 3 sources to every story. So they are well researched. They're not just one person's comments and then it's a story. So we try and go deep on those.
Great.
Thank you.
And I receive the emails now currently, and it's always a good job. It's well done. Nothing really negative. It's all positive. So, and that's what we need.
Thank you.
Monica?
Sorry if my voice is not the best today, sorry. A couple of questions I just wanted to ask. What is the differences between your resource and Patch? Because I noticed that you're kind of following some of the similar strategies as Patch.com, which is now, used to be owned by, I think it used to be owned by AOL, but it's now owned by Huffington Post. So that was the first question.
Did you hear the question?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm so sorry.
I didn't hear it. I'm glad you did.
I am so sorry.
Well, he heard it, that's okay.
Yeah.
Let him respond.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we've been watching a lot of hyper-local things that have actually come and gone over the years across the country. And Patch very much intentionally targeted very specific zip codes, and they often targeted zip codes that were affluent zip codes that they thought they could sell a lot of ads to. And so I would say we don't sell ads, for one. And we're also targeting very different communities than Patch is. In many cases, we're going to places that we believe have become news deserts as a result of media collapse. And this has really nothing to do with Washtenaw County. We see this in Denver, we see this in Providence, Rhode Island, we see it in Tampa, Florida. But what we've seen is with the collapse of the Ann Arbor News in this community, it really is limited right now in resources for obvious reasons. And they cover the city of Ann Arbor pretty well, and they'll cover
Crime.
some crime that appears in Ypsi sometimes, but they really do not go very deep on a number of the critical issues facing the community. So I would say those are probably the biggest differences. We're not advertising based, and we're really going after places that have become news deserts that we think have a lot of really important work being done that is currently rather invisible.
Thank you. I noticed you said that you're doing like sponsorships, pretty much like NPR style with, this segment or story is sponsored by. So are you is your organization a nonprofit or kind of hybrid, or how is that working?
We are for-profit with obviously a very social mission to it. But yeah, the way that works is we want to reassure you that the dollars, in this case, the $12,000 that we're talking about, would only be used to cover Ypsilanti Township.
Okay.
And that would be it. So you can see that we have other partners like the DDA in Ypsilanti. Their dollars are only used to cover the downtown, that district alone. And again, and everybody kind of agrees to that. So there are some people that have preferences. Others don't really care. Like, the county, for example, has not told us they have any specific needs, in that way. Parks and Rec would like to see things like green space and non-motorized transportation. So we allow people to pick what we call focus areas. And in this case, we believe the focus area would be the township for your dollars. And we would be, we come back to you and report back to you how your dollars were used. We show you the examples of the stories that were used and the reach that was accomplished with them. We actually just had our 2017 report out today at 1 o'clock at Eastern Michigan University with this whole crowd of funders from 2017.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question, hopefully I'm loud enough. You said that you do have a subscriber base already in regards to the newsletter campaign. Do you know roughly how many people are on
We
that?
have about 16,000 subscribers.
Okay.
And then again, to the conversation we were having earlier, a lot of news habits have changed so much over the last 5 years. I think all of us have as well, that so much of it goes to social media now. Many of us get our news there. So we have dedicated budgets for every single story to be boosted on Facebook and targeted to specific communities. And at the same time, we have relationships with WEMU where the stories are broadcast. So we have a whole series of very intentional reach strategies to make sure that we reach more and more residents and business owners and so forth.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just to piggyback off of Trustee Ross Williams' question about the newsletter, I was just going to go sign up for the newsletter.
Yeah.
And would it stay just concentrate Ann Arbor, or will there actually eventually be a section that's only for Ypsilanti area?
Exactly. We've actually had that. We were having that conversation earlier today. Yes.
We love Ann Arbor.
Right.
But we're not Ann Arbor. Like, we just had
Absolutely.
the American Center for Mobility come and live articles said, oh, ACM came near Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
And it was like, wait, no, it's in the township.
But
Why
if it
can't
was
you say-
crime, it would have been labeled
Absolutely,
a shooting near
So, okay.
Ypsilanti Township.
I just wanted to
right,
ask
yeah.
about that newsletter
Yeah,
question.
we've noticed this as well. Yeah, we will. That is something that's in the works right now. Absolutely.
And just so I'm just briefly reading the contract, and when are the invoices, are there 2 invoices dates? Or just one invoice up front?
It's completely up to you.
I'm just reading the contract.
Yeah, we can, however, we often do one payment because most organizations prefer that. There are others that for cash flow purposes spread it
Okay.
out semi-annually or quarterly, whatever is easiest for you.
And it says, the agreement says, once you create an invoice, but then there's a 30-day written notice, you can, cancel either party.
Right.
But if we pay you all the money up front,
Then we would return whatever's left. So the way that we earn is we earn it, essentially the $12,000 is earned $1,000 a month at a time.
right.
And so if 6 months through you're like, this isn't what we hoped for, you're fired, then we would return the remainder. The remainder of the contract is how that works with the 30-day notice. We have not ever had this happen, but we do give people peace of mind.
And I know,
that
I'm
it's- But I think it's appropriate
You
to
seem
ask.
nice, but we
I see,
really don't
you never
know you. so
right?
I gotta ask these questions.
Yeah.
Stan?
Sorry, I have a couple Well, I have 5 questions.
Sure.
You say you've been with the city of Ypsilanti? Working with the city?
They're one of the coalition
How long have you been
members.
with them?
For about 6 months.
Okay. I'm not nearly as tech savvy as some of the other board members, so how do you get the word out that this even exists? I've been here forever. This is the first time I've ever heard about this tonight. Again, I'm not as tech savvy as them.
Sure. So one, we do have a pretty good subscriber base. It's being distributed, as we mentioned, also on WEMU on air. They also produce it. Also, if you've ever heard of the Ann magazine, they have another thing called Anthology that comes out daily. That's also distributing it. We've had partnerships with Michigan Radio as well. We have partnerships with the Free Press. And we also invest significantly in Facebook, because that's really where we're starting to find that most people are beginning their news. That's where they get their first bit of news. So we do know that we are not a household brand in the same way that the Detroit Free Press is in this community, or Ann Arbor News has been in the past or something. So we have a lot of work to do. But we are, in the past 5 months, we reached over 300,000 people with the coverage, according to Google and Facebook. So.
Okay. And there you mentioned you have subscribers. Is there a cost to subscribe, or is it a free?
Free.
Okay.
Yeah.
For $12,000, do we get a story a month, a story a week, one every 6 months? How does that work?
It typically would be no less than one a month. So it would be that one a month consistently. We would love to sit with you and have more story ideas coming at us, and we can there is no limit to it. We set a minimum, but there is no maximum. And of course, we're looking for story ideas. Our journalists get paid when they deliver stories.
And then you had mentioned, or the supervisor had asked you about the invoicing and the 30-day. If I read the contract, it's $12,000 from January to December of 18. We've already missed a month and a half, so we would take that, prorate that off the 12?
Or roll it into the beginning of next year. Yeah, either way, however you want to do it. We had met earlier in the year, of course, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We met in January.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I updated the board at the meeting just to let them know that we had the meeting and that you were coming to the work session. And
This was really fast, by the way, so that was great. Thank
is
you.
that 5 questions, Stan?
It was.
Okay.
I can give you 5 more.
No, I just wanted
kidding.
to. So, and I remember when we met, when Karen, Clerk Rowe and I met with you, you talked about how you would go into the neighborhoods and have community engagement meetings with them to get stories and to learn, literally get on the ground news, as opposed to us necessarily always feeding you stuff. But if we hear something, we just send an email and you independently decide on if you're going to investigate it or whatever, right?
Exactly. So if you want to share an idea, then Brianna Kelly, who's the project editor, she leads the work. You'll get a return contact and say, tell me more about this, or can you get me connected to the people doing the work? Because often what we find is you may run across story ideas that come across your desk. You're probably not the source of the story, but you can get them connected to the UAW, for example. Get us connected, and then she'll go chase down the story.
And I met Brianna. She did one story on the American Center for Mobility. I was mortified because they take pictures with every, and so, but I do know that you also require a photo, which is good, because a lot of times people like pictures too, to look at pictures with stories. And it was very, very in-depth. And I have seen her, Karen and I were at a couple of events, and so she's on the ground. I mean, I can tell.
That was one of the reasons that one of the responses that we structured her contract with us in a way that one of the frustrations people have is that they never see journalists anymore. 10, 15 years ago, you'd go to any public meeting, there was always a journalist sitting there, good or bad, they were there.
No, you're right.
But people are very frustrated that they just don't even feel like these things are heard or covered. So I'm glad to hear that you feel like you're seeing her around, and you'll see a lot more of her.
And it does call for her attending one meeting, right?
Yes, every week she has to.
Yeah,
At
so
least
if it's a
one.
planning commission or a neighborhood meeting or.
Absolutely. And we just, in the meeting we had earlier today, I'll say the weakness that we had in the first 5 months that this program ran last year is we did a great job covering organizations, but we need to cover more resident voices.
Right.
And this is something that we talked with Brianna about, and the real challenge on that is that means it has to happen in the evening. So she's working all day and then goes and meets with all the residents in the evening. So it consumes her life, but she's very excited about the work. And so this year, we're really working hard to get more resident voice.
Okay. Trustee Elder?
Oh, I'm sorry, I have one more question.
Sure.
Mine always relate around money, sorry. The contract that's in here, is that similar to every other contract you have with other entities?
They all have the same contract.
And the pricing is the same for everybody?
It is a little different from place to place. So for example,
Washoe.
Downtown Association of Ypsilanti, I mean, they literally came in for $750, to give you a sense. So there are some people who we want around the table but cannot come in and participate at that level. And then we have people like the county that came in much higher than $12,000. So there is a little bit of in different places and so.
Where would our neighbors be in the city? Are they close to us, below us, or above us?
I'm not sure.
The city of Ypsilanti.
Oh, the city of Ypsilanti. So the city did theirs as kind of a bundle of the city and the DDA combined. And they're very, very close to this number, very close. I think within, $500 or something. Yeah.
So if we pay more, do we get more? Just asking.
Yeah, that is typically how it, meaning that we have accountability. We have to come back to you and show you how the dollars were spent. So that is often what we will do, is go back and do
But
that.
the responsibility is ours also to get engaged, to help the reporter to feed, right?
That would be the thing, that we had that question earlier today. We had all these partners sitting around the table and they said, how do we do this better? And we just said, please just show up. I mean, because that's the thing, is if they show up to the editorial advisor, if you send story ideas, all of those things, we can't do every story, but it sometimes leads to another story and another story. So your willingness to show up and willingness to host meetings makes a big difference.
No, oh, I just have another. Does the story have to generate and take place within the township confines? Or if we have a resident who's done something extraordinary that carries them outside of our township, can it be more of a story about the person? Okay.
Absolutely. We have, I mean, again, I think it's still, the number's a crazy number, like 80% of people do not live where they work in this country. So there are a lot of times that we're covering really remarkable residents that are doing work all over the country. So we're very interested in those stories, absolutely.
One last question. One of the biggest concerns that I have is how underreported our small business market is. And particularly, small businesses that have been in Ypsilanti Township for a long time, or even just new inside the township and contributing and providing jobs and giving opportunity and resource to our residents. I'll be honest, that's one of the stories that I want to see covered, because I believe that our current resourcer, if you want to go there, have vastly undercovered that story. If one of the ideas of your program is to increase revenue, that is how you increase it, is by highlighting those small businesses and what they do for the community as a whole.
It's absolutely the core of what we're doing. We actually think there are a lot of these businesses that are doing, again, incredible business. They're almost invisible unless you're driving by them on your way home from work. And it actually just triggered something for me that you mentioned, something that we started tracking about 3 years ago as a result of our work with the Kellogg Foundation, is we actually track, when we do stories, whether the story was done about a person of color or a leader of color, or serving a community of color. And as of right now, as we wrapped up the first 5 months of this work, 62% of the stories that we wrote were about a person of color, a leader of color leading that work, business owners or other community leaders. 70% of the coverage that we've done to date has been about serving communities of color. So it's something that we take racial equity very seriously. We believe that this community is made up of a lot of people making a lot of positive change, and we are holding ourselves accountable to report those numbers back to you as well. So what we want to be careful of is just not a publication about a bunch of white folks opening new coffee houses and things like that, because that can happen.
And we have a lot of diversity also, and that's another thing. And just to let you know, there's a Korean restaurant that I know that doesn't get a lot of coverage right over off of Ellsworth, so just a plug there.
Perfect, we'll check it out. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I do think, and hopefully it'll come out, and because they're equality, social, economic equality, I think a lot of times we try to focus on lifting people up. That's, a lot of the things that we do with Habitat for Humanity, Marvin Parsons, Meals on Wheels. We really want to focus on lifting people up and supporting our local businesses, which we've never had the opportunity to do. And I am very thankful that you're independent, that I can't control you, this board can't control you, that it's really an independent newspaper. Even though I would like to control you,
Right.
I appreciate that no one can,
I appreciate that you're raising that, because I think that is something we need to make very clear is your story ideas that come to us, we see them as suggestions. We do not see them as requirements or assignments. We are going to take those stories wherever they go, and it's the only way that this works. Otherwise, no one would read what we're doing. There's no way the NPR affiliates or others would take these stories if they felt like it was just, you pay us and we write. This needs to remain editorial. So I appreciate you saying that. And
Now, the stories that you wrote, we'd asked them that, because we hope to do a publication, we've talked about it for 7 years, for mailing out to residents, since there really isn't a hard newspaper either. And you said that we could use those stories for that publication if this board decides to actually do that.
yeah, you have the license to reuse all the stories and all the photography and all the
Okay.
video as part of your agreement. And you can use it online and you can use it in print.
Okay.
Absolutely. People use it sometimes they'll use our photographs for annual reports. They use it for a lot of reasons. The only thing that we ask is if you're going to use it for like an outdoor advertisement, let us know first, because the photographer gets a little weird about usage. So,
And we're the first township, it looks like, to really,
first township we've ever worked with, actually, that I can think
Cool.
of, so yes. We're hoping not the last. But,
all right. Yeah.
Great.
Was it all right? You
that's good.
feel good about it?
Thank you. Yes, if you do. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. And can we get a copy of that and put it in our packet, Karen, for the minute, for the work? Upload it, just so we know what was presented. I think you did, but this is a little bit different, right? Yeah, it is. The next item is the Economic Development Strategy from Richard Carlisle. Carlisle Warming.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I'm testimony to the fact that I get contacted, I've been contacted frequently by their affiliate groups in the Detroit area. They do write very good stories and thorough, And Brenda, I had my picture taken out in front of our office, and the only thing I objected to is the fact that I thought that photography was supposed to make you look slimmer. It didn't happen,
Right.
So, or younger, didn't happen. Or smarter, definitely didn't happen. So, hey, I'm really excited to be here tonight. When we first started working for the township, I told you that we were happy to be here because we've wanted to work for the township for a long time. And this particular work has been sort of the culmination of a really great effort over the last 6 to 8 months that's really coming together. And it's so ironic that tonight we're doing it when Paul is here regarding creating an environment for investment, because what we think will occur out of this are a lot of very good stories. You already have a lot of good stories to tell here in the township and a lot of great things to share with people, but we think out of this that a lot more can come from the. So one of the reasons that I wanted to, we've been working with a steering committee. We've had a lot of public input. We've had initial presentation with this board. I wanted to bring you up to speed on where we are and why we need an economic development strategy. First of all, you are located in an area that's generating a lot of new investment. I mean, look at ACM and look at what the spinoff is that's going to occur from that. So consequently, it's creating a demand. It will create a demand for new businesses, and consequently, we need to have a strategy in terms of how we can attract and accommodate those businesses. You at one time, and I'll talk a lot more in detail about this later on, but the recession affected your ability to deliver a service regarding economic development. And I know that Brenda and I have talked a lot about the fact that you had an infrastructure in place and it pretty much disappeared. And now is the time to reinstitute that infrastructure if you really want to capitalize on the opportunities that are coming before you. And we always advocate that doing this in a more planned and strategic manner is far better than just doing it in a scattergun approach. So what do I mean when I talk about an investment environment? Well, it's very similar to the previous presentation because, you know, the township is an environment in which people can invest, okay? They can invest their time, they can invest their talent, they can invest their dollars, okay? Hopefully, we want them to invest all three and hopefully invest in the community in a manner that will improve the community, create jobs, and create economic development. But the decision for people to invest, they have many options. We all have plenty of options to do what we want to with our time, with our talent, and with our money. So they can do it here, they can do it there, they can devote it to an organization, they can devote it to something else. You want to create an environment where people want to invest in your community. So we have to ask the questions, why would somebody invest in Ypsilanti Township, and what assets, services, and growth opportunities are there in the township for them that would be attractive to them, and, you know, for them to invest their dollars and their hard-earned time and talent in that particular entity. And that's what this program is all about. That's what ultimately developing an economic development strategy and putting an economic development infrastructure back in place will to create to either convince people that the township is an attractive investment environment, or to create the necessary things to even make it a more attractive investment environment. What's the bottom line with all this, though? The idea is that we are not going to be successful unless we create better, high-paying jobs, and that comes with creating new and expanded businesses. The old approach of economic development, which happened, you know, which is still happening in many cases, but used to happen even more so before the recession, pre-recession, is the old approach to economic development was to focus on attracting large companies. I know from my experience that that is only marginally successful. You can spend a lot of time and a lot of money on trying to compete for the same business that hundreds of other places are competing for. And we happen to feel that a better approach is to improve the foundation for expanding existing businesses and attract talent who will create new businesses in your community. And I think you've got the assets to do that. You really do. We just need to put the organization in place to be able to do it. The other point about this is that companies that have strong roots in the community will put more back into the community than inanimate chain companies, and I'll talk a little bit about that more in the end. But there has been, you know, empirical research that shows that companies that have a strong roots in the community will invest back into the community, hire people, you know, invest in your local organizations, and contribute to things of charitable causes, put more money back into the community. So this is a little graphic that I do like to show. It wasn't originally created for this. It actually came from an article that Ben and I wrote for one of our professional magazines, but it's what I call is a model for success, that quality places retain and attract talent, talented people create jobs, and talented people like places with natural, social, creative, entrepreneurial, and intellectual capital. And so what it does is this concept combines placemaking and economic development, because it is a cycle, basically, where if you have a quality place that has assets that people want, you'll attract people, you'll keep people, and those are the people that are going to invest in your communities. So township assets, I'm going to go through this quickly because you do already know more about your assets than I do. I'm still learning about it, but you are the second largest community in Washtenaw County, 54,000 people. You have a younger population with a median age of 33.7 years, which is younger than the median age of all of Michigan, and you do have an educated population. one of the things one of the things we've been talking about with the steering committee is that how big is small business? And I say small business is a big deal. It really is in this community. It counts for over half of the new job creation. They have a higher rate of survival, and they invest 48% of their revenue back into the community in terms of employment, as opposed to chain companies. And that's why a foundation of this strategy really is to focus in building small business. We have, and in your community, the 98% of your businesses are small businesses with, thousands, many thousand employees. So think about that. We have I can't remember, but I told the steering committee, I think we have 1,000 small businesses in this community. Think about if, on average, if every small business added one job, that'd be 1,000 new jobs in this community. Not every company is going to grow, but some small companies will grow even at a faster rate than that, and that's where we should be devoting our time. We also have really good development partners. You know who they are. We have worked with them throughout this study. You work with them, Spark. We had a great session with the Washtenaw Community College Entrepreneurship Center, the Small Business Development Center. You have a number of assets here and opportunities to work with these folks to help and assist and be good partners in an economic development program. We have beautiful natural features, we have wonderful parks. You have Ford Lake, we have the Huron River, we have wonderful assets, we have some beautiful golf courses, we have, Eagle Crest, one of the premier, spots in southeastern Michigan. So we have a lot to go on. We have a wonderful location where we are strategically located between Detroit Metro Airport and Ann Arbor, I-94 with tremendous accessibility here to go both east and west. We're very close to 275 and US 23 to go north and south. So from the standpoint of both people who want to live here and are employed elsewhere, and employers who want to be here that need to get their products someplace else, you have excellent accessibility. We have actually a great access to higher education and healthcare. We have great universities in this county. We have great healthcare in this county. We have obviously what's going on at Willer Run. I mean, that is the big story, obviously with ACM, the Yankee Air Museum, and all the investment that has already occurred there and is going to occur even further. But we have challenges too. And this came out of our surveys with people and our work with our steering committee. And that is, we have primary and secondary schools that need to perform better. In the township here, we have underutilized and vacant land, quite a bit of it. We have blighted corridors in Michigan Avenue and Ecorse Road. But all of these challenges, in my humble estimation, present opportunities, tremendous opportunities to move forward. And things that we're already starting to do things about, too, by the way. The issue of the schools has come up in every conversation, and there are a lot of good stories in terms of improvement in that particular regard. We are now working on the Michigan Avenue and Ecorse corridor studies, which I think some interesting and exciting ideas will come out of that. That's the DMAP, U of M DMAP funded project, and you'll see more about that. We have a great environment for retail and industrial office investment. We did a retail market study of the township, and we have 54,000 people representing significant spending power. But we did find that you're bleeding off a lot of that spending power to the east and to the west. So there is market potential for a great deal of services, for food services, for restaurants, for furniture, building supplies and materials, and many other categories. In other words, we need help figure out a way to keep some of those dollars spent back in the township at local businesses. Since I've started here, I keep hearing about the fact of how desperately we need a new hardware store in this community. Well, that is one of the spending categories which are being spent elsewhere, outside, and there is available disposable dollars to support businesses like that in your community. We do know the retail market is changing, but, despite what you read, in a lot of media, the retail market is not dead. It's going through a change right now, especially with the large-scale retailers really struggling. But the fact is that retailers that promote a unique product, quality, service are still sustaining, okay? Smaller stores are in these days, larger stores are out. You can't replace personal service. You can't replace personal service by buying it online. Personal service is still a key to retail businesses flourishing. And businesses that understand the customer base and the generational trends in spending will be a key to success, because there are quite different trends between different generations in terms of their priorities and what they spend their money on. We also have a pretty rich industrial office environment. We have over 2,400 acres of land zoned for industrial research and research office, but 664 acres of that, 1/4 of that is vacant. So that is a great opportunity, because industrial land is at a premium throughout southeastern Michigan. Industrial building space is at an even bigger premium. 2% of the vacant, there's only a 2% vacancy rate right now in industrial building space, and I couldn't have told you that 10 years ago. But it is tremendous, the demand for industrial building space. There's also a demand shifting towards more flex space, and what I mean is all under one roof type of space, where you have office, R&D, assembly, and distribution all under one roof. So flexibility in the space is more important. We got to make sure that our zoning ordinance requirements do permit and encourage that kind of thing. There are quite a bit of property in the township that also is going to need some physical and beautification improvements. Let's face it, we know that, and that's something that, moving forward, we think working with the township, we can identify where we can strategically invest some dollars to make some of this land more attractive to invest in. Again, market trends, there's a decreasing demand for conventional space. There's a decreasing demand for conventional space, increasing demand for flex space. We need broadband access. That's a key throughout the township, throughout anywhere. Community amenities and quality of life are a key component to attracting new business, especially the entrepreneurial type businesses. And no matter what we do, regional collaboration is key. That's what businesses are looking for, to see that people are working together, basically, and we have some strong partners and some strong neighbors that we can work with. I mean, a successful business opens up in Ypsilanti Township. People are not all going to live here. They're going to live maybe in Pittsfield. They may live in the city of Ypsilanti. So everybody's going to benefit, on a regional basis when we collaborate and attract new economic investment. We've had some really great and strong community engagement. The steering committee that we've been working with, and Jimmy has been sitting on that, as well as Brenda, have been great. We've gotten some outstanding input from them. I think that is a group to be really, the next step for them are to be champions for the township from that standpoint. We conducted a business survey, personal interviews, and we did conduct a really tremendously successful real estate forum where we had panelists, good attendance, but really great insight from a group of expert panelists. So the common themes of that, and then you'll see why this is important, because this really has translated into some specific strategies that we're recommending. The common themes were it's very important that we communicate as a community a clear vision, and one upon which we're all pretty much on board. That the leadership in this particular regard is extremely important. And I don't mean, township leadership. I mean leadership across the board. You have to have leaders willing to lead, in all walks of the community. Emphasize education and workforce development is important in creating a township identity, or expanding upon the township identity. Improving the business climate, becoming more development ready, improve access to business and development resources, build upon existing emerging township assets. The real estate forum, all the panelists said that ACM will be a magnet. It's going to be a gravity center for new development. how we capitalize upon that's going to be a key, and how, and having our organized effort do that will is going to be the real key about how much the township benefits from that. Obviously, increased work skills and training are needed. We need to promote and improve quality of life in the community because, that not only attracts economic activity, it benefits your existing residents. So everything that you do to invest in quality of life is going to benefit the people that are already here, too. And that's what's one of the great things that I think about combining the concept of placemaking and economic development, because it is more than just trying to benefit a business. It's trying to benefit the people who are already here, who, by the way, may also have businesses in the community. Promotion of food innovation and agricultural opportunities. And again, one of the themes that came through was collaboration is key. So out of all this, we developed a set of vision, principles, and strategies. This is the real crux of what I want to share with you tonight. I won't read through this in every word, but this vision is really something that is part of the plan. It can be a guide. It could be the guiding visual for economic development. But the real core of this is that we recognize that our future is through better, high-paying employment opportunities with the creation and expansion of existing businesses and the attraction of new investment in the community. And then it goes on to say the kinds of things that we'll invest in to create that kind of environment. The following guiding principles will really guide how we do this. Collaboration is the key. That's the third time I've said that, isn't it? A diversified economic base will be more sustainable. In other words, when and I know that you have experienced it, when your economic base was focused as a primarily manufacturing base and that declined, it hurt your community tremendously. So that has been what you've been trying to recover from, And so diversification will make you more adverse to those kinds of major downturns going forward. An educated and skilled workforce is essential, and we have some specific things that we want to recommend about that. Economic development has to be compatible with your quality of life. I mean, what you do cannot degrade, the living, the lifestyle and the quality of life, particularly for your existing residents. And improving a sense of place. In other words, having people identify with you as a community will benefit economic development. I've seen it happen before. Once a community becomes their own best champion, people take notice. Leadership and organizational capacity is one of the key things. We need to strengthen and expand that capacity. We need to commit to higher quality economic development outcomes. In other words, we can expect quality here. We can create expectation for that without making it an onerous endeavor. We need to provide funding to support capacity improvements. I mean capacity improvements here in the township. Provide training programs for all elected and appointed officials so that we are the most expert at that comes as local officials. We need to build an economic development staff capacity. An economic development director, that position needs to be restored. And I want to share with you in a moment some of the qualifications of that. And we need to have an ongoing public engagement loop, and I think the presentation we heard earlier is one way. There's obviously a number of other ways we can do. We just need to constantly, we have 54,000 people here, so it's going to be hard to reach everybody, but we have to make that a legitimate opportunity to gain the kind of support that you're going to need moving forward for the things that you need to do. We are already, in terms of land development policies and processes, we are already in the process of reviewing and revising the zoning ordinance to be more user-friendly and effective in fostering development. And that includes reviewing and revising zoning categories to make them more understandable. Maybe we have too many. I don't know. We'll see. Clarify and streamline development processes. Again, none of this is meant to diminish quality, because in my experience, just by making things longer doesn't necessarily get a better end product. And encourage the development of more flex space in the township. Image and communication enhancements. I know that you as a board have talked about this a lot, but you have a compelling story to tell, especially a story of the history, the richness of the history of this community, from starting where, Willow Run was to where it is now, and all of the changes that have occurred and the things that this community has to offer. One of the things that we recommend to communities when they're looking at, quote, branding is build authenticity into that brand. You have an authentic image. We don't need to contrive an image about Ypsilanti Township. You're not going to become a Bavarian village. You're not going to be Frankenmuth, but you have an authentic image in this community that is attractive and should be really built upon. Part of, determining the best methods of communicating that image is important. And again, broadening the public participation and engagement in the future economic development has to be part of all of that. The business climate. We need to establish some robust business retention practices. And this would be a primary job of an economic development staff person, is to visit businesses, see what they're struggling with or what they're succeeding with. Because we want to keep the ones that are here. We don't want them going someplace else. That's a base upon which you're going to build success. And they're going to build, and those small businesses are going to attract other small businesses. We need to, have methodologies to support small businesses and aspiring business entrepreneurs. We have the resources to match up what the needs are for small businesses with what they need with what's available out there. We are in an environment here in Washtenaw County where there are a lot of business support services. I think the problem is people don't necessarily know what's available out there. So, for example, I'm launching a new business enterprise as a spinoff of my company, but I don't know the first thing about web-based marketing. Where do I go, Those resources are available, and, already, but we, part of what we need to do is match those people up with what the resources are with some of our partners. Organizational and networking opportunities. When you create a business, when you bring business folks together, they figure out how to create more. They learn from one another, they share ideas and resources, and I've seen some very tremendous business-to-business marketing programs because they may not know that this business that's located half a mile down the road can supply something for them to decrease their cost of doing business or improve their end product. So business-to-business marketing has been a very important element in a lot of economic development programs. And then also a microloan program. This might not necessarily be funded by the township. There might be some resources that we have to find, but microloans for startup businesses to be able to fund certain things such as developing a business plan. You're not going to go to the bank and borrow money until you have a good, solid business plan together. You may not be able to put a business plan together until you have a little bit of seed money to really get the ideas put together. So that's just an example of where a microloan program might be, and that could be on a revolving type of loan basis. Workforce development and education. This may not be something that we focus on as a primary function, but in a coordinating function where we can connect people to where there are enhancement programs, compiling a resource guide of workforce development opportunities. One of the ideas that we came up with is to actually create a private fund to support access to training and certification. We may have folks out there that want to access a training and certification program that might be available at Washtenaw Community College or someplace else, but they don't have the funds to be able to pay for that if it is required. And that could put them, with that certification, it could put them right back into the job market for jobs for which without that certification, they may not be qualified. So again, I'm a real big believer in, investing a few dollars to be able to generate a much more greater return on that investment. And so I think that's an opportunity that we ought to look at. That comes also through expanding partnerships with many of the school programs that are already being successful, such as STEM. And we can be a sponsor of job fairs. We can be somebody that, actually is a partner in doing job shares. We've talked to Washington Community College about doing that and actually putting local employers in touch with people looking for a job in an environment that we create. And then finally, you can't see that because it's not coming up there, the sharing success stories. I don't think I need to say anything more about that. We've got some business success stories that can be shared. Now, we also need to do some physical revitalization. Many of our gateways and our key commercial corridors need to be, beautified and enhanced. We need to know that when we enter off the expressways, we're coming into Ypsilanti Township. We need to know where we're here, but we need to know it's an attractive place. We need to create gathering spaces that are attractive to citizens and visitors in our business areas. Beautification campaigns throughout all of our corridors, and we need to, and part of the way that we can fund many of this stuff is to dispose of some of the excess land that the township hands, for more strategic gain. And so all of these strategies are very achievable. The final step of what we are doing is preparing an implementation plan that will take all these strategies, identify responsibilities, and a time frame. Not all of this has to be done in a year. In fact, all of it can't be done in a year. I know that for sure. But waiting another year will mean we just delay that one more year. Waiting 2 more years means we've delayed it 2 years, and by that time we may have lost some opportunities. What I did, I prepared for a lot of times when people, when I work with communities and they begin their search for what an economic development coordinator or director really needs. It's a position for which there must be broad skills, okay, from that standpoint. And there's really about seven skill sets, or no, actually 9 skill sets and functions that an economic development coordinator and department would really need to be well-versed in. Research and education. A lot of businesses are going to come to you and look for data, about your community. And it's very important that we have a good ability to be able to provide that data on an ongoing basis to businesses. Obviously, economic development department would have to be marketing promotions. Very important, obviously, promote both internal and external communications designed really to promote the community. This person would have to have a very good knowledge of financing and incentives. And incentives are changing all the time, by the way, depending on market demand. This is a dynamic environment. So being well-versed in how to strategically package financing and take maximum advantage of the economic development programs that are already out there and the ones that are coming online are extremely important. Site location. We have prepared an inventory of available land in the township, and there is data already through Spark about available buildings. And this is a database that has to be continually kept up. But again, you want to be able to, when you have an economic opportunity, you want to be able to really seize upon it and give people the information that they need. Market development includes activities to help existing businesses really develop their businesses, new products, customers, and opportunities. That can include matchmaking between businesses, as I suggested, business to business or businesses that need certain resources, help with that matchmaking. Sometimes an economic development director is an ombudsman to sort of facilitate processes so that a person that is having difficulty, getting the project approved might need a little guidance and help. Obviously, technical assistance, preparing a business line, helping, putting somebody in touch with how to prepare a business plan or loan application, or other types of special services. Every business's needs are different, and so a person's got to be pretty flexible in terms of their skill sets. We need to have a program that is ongoing and is strategically planned. The Township Board should expect an annual work plan in terms of what is going to be pursued and achieved that year. And then finally, someone that has a lot of knowledge in workforce training. Even though we may not be specifically doing that here, we've got to get hooked into the programs that provide that, because that's really essential. So that is really, that's where we are right now. And that's what we have developed working with the steering committee and with a lot of input from various members of the community and both inside and outside the community that are involved in economic development. And so I'll be happy to answer any questions of the board.
Are there any questions or comments?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Trustee Rowe.
Just, I guess, 2 comments, but in your model for success with the 3 circles and the arrows, earlier when I was reading this too, it popped out at me again during your presentation, but the purple one, it says talented people with like places with natural, social, creative, entrepreneurial, and intellectual capital. And just thinking about that, I mean, we do have wonderfully beautiful parks, but I think it's important that we continue to maintain those. I think that's, just with trying to balance everything, I think it's been hard to keep that as a focus. But then also just talking about the social piece, when I think about myself I'm 27, my husband's 30, and when we go out to do things like, eat dinner and have adult beverages, with friends that ask me to go out, there are more times than not, they're not in the township. They're in the city, which is, still great to partner and support the city of Ypsilanti, but they're not in the township. And I can also say that the last few times that we've been out, just since having a baby 8 weeks ago, we've been out twice, and there's literally no parking downtown Ypsi because it's so just bustling with busy. Yeah, it's just busy, and it's just wonderful. But, it's not, so I just see that as an area of something that, my age group really, that's where all our money's going. Yeah. You don't want to know my budget on adult beverages.
Won't ask.
Any other questions or comments on that?
It's okay. I wanted to specifically, sorry, let me lean closer, ask you a question about microloans. I know obviously this wouldn't be something that the township maybe necessarily would set up, but maybe some partners with banks or whatever have you. And particularly maybe, I don't know how familiar you are with the Kiva or Creed models. Kiva is more of an Indian model, but basically it means that some resources, basically the holder of the funds, and people in the community contributes towards that resource in order to give money to businesses that may want to either have a loan or even, some type of, I guess you could say, a quasi-grant.
Right.
And then Creed is basically, it's here in Washtenaw County. They do a microloans program that's associated with SBA.
Right.
And a couple other things. I know that we, this is just a comment. I know Ypsi does a pitch competition. I judged it one year, and I know they were looking to tailor it for future years. One thing that concerns me is that it's the Ypsi pitch, so it's really broad, which is great. But the downside of that is that it's not also centered on just township businesses, is centered on Ypsi area businesses. And to me, and one of the things I think was that we do need to look at doing some type of pitch competition for businesses that are here inside the township. So that's just a comment, or maybe an Ypsi Township soup. I'm sure you may be familiar with the soup concept.
Yeah.
Let me see. So that's more comments. It is a question. I did have a question in regards to an economic director. Previous histories basically with hiring an economic development director. There's a lot of talent out there for that. And I guess specifically my question is, how do you, I guess you could say, balance the talent that's out there for economic directors versus what Ypsilanti Township needs? Because we have specific focuses that need to be for our township. Does that, okay.
That's a great question, and really I think that's a next step, absolutely, absolutely, and I've given you just sort of a snapshot of what's in the plan. I mean, that what's in this plan should provide some guidance in terms of describing the kind of, putting together the job description and then ultimately selecting the type of person that you need. It's got to be, my impression is it's got to be someone who is equally entrepreneurial, from that standpoint. I've worked in the field of planning and community development for a long time. And the economic development folks in the past were typically termed smokestack chasers, because that's pretty much what they did. I mean, their entire job was to chase after, industrial businesses primarily, to try to bring them into a community. And, the locational factors were much different, 30 years ago than they are now. The type of person you need is somebody who really understands this whole idea of creating an environment for investment, and the kinds of things, the all-encompassing things that you need to do that are more than just going out and recruiting. I mean, that's only one little small part of economic development. It's recruiting, it's partnerships, it's collaboration, it's putting people together. It's as much of a public relations position as it is, an economic development position. And so consequently, it's got to be, what we need to be looking for is somebody, highly creative, a successful track record, but somebody that fully understands the changes that have occurred in our economy. We are in a changing economy. We're in a changed economy. It's not the way it used to be. I mean, even manufacturing is technology-based now, So, so the fact is, it's got to be somebody that fully understands that we're in a global economy, we're in a changing economy. How do we in Ypsilanti Township capitalize upon those things and capitalize upon our assets to really increase, economic activity in this community?
Thank you. I have one more question. You also spoke about signage, and I just wanted to highlight, because this signage has always caught my eye. On Michigan Ave, when you're coming back into Ypsilanti Township, I don't know if this is Tim Hortons that did that privately or in Hewitt. That signage that says, "Welcome to Ypsilanti Township," that is an eye catcher. It always catches my eye when I'm going down Washtenaw, going into Ypsi Township, going towards Pittsfield. And signage, like you said, is very important. If you look at other communities, they're defined by their signage. I think our way signage has been a big help, but if we can get more, that would be great too. Right. So thank you.
Monica, are you complete? Okay. Karen?
My issue is, I think sometimes we underplay ourselves, and then looking at the whole economic development staffing, which obviously will start with some kind of director person. How will we figure out, I see it as two things. One, we have to figure out what are the special, skills or experiences, because I think someone developing Cleveland is different than,
Right.
you know, which part of that is looking at the plan that you put together and us figuring out what are the priorities, which hopefully you're going to help us with that, to prioritize. But then once we get those priorities, how to match that with the person, which I think is what
Yeah.
Trustee Ross Williams is asking. But then also, how do we figure out what we have to pay them? Because sometimes I think that we maybe don't pay enough to get
Right.
at the level. A lot of folks that have risen here, risen through the ranks, and that's a different thing than when you're out in the marketplace. You know, because when we move it forward, I don't want to mess around. I want to get the top-notch person that is willing to leave wherever they're at, because they're obviously somewhere, and want to start at the ground zero, because that's where we're at, and really is desirous of being a part of just helping us, like, you know, make our vision and dreams come, you know, reality over, you know, a longer process. And how do we figure out what it is it takes to get that person here?
Well, Clerk, I mean, we have a lot of, it is a good question. I mean, I think it's probably.
It's a big question, I know.
Well, but it's, you know, it's also the same kind of challenge you have probably trying to find, you know, fill other positions from that standpoint too. It is a challenge for everybody, actually. But I think we do have some resources here that we can draw upon to provide us with that information. I mean, we have, I mean, I think once the township's intentions have become clear, you know, we have people that we can talk to that can provide us with some advice in that particular regard. We certainly have certain resources that we can provide to you in terms of helping you answer some of those questions. And, you know, I do agree. I mean, this isn't the kind of thing, this is not an entry-level position. Right. Because you'll be wasting your money. You know, I think that part of it can stem out of some of the things that are coming out of ACM. I mean, we have the ability to understand more of what's going on with some of the businesses they're attracting, and start to and tailor this position to a type of person with the skill sets to really capitalize upon, you know, what we've already got going in this community. But these are the kinds of things, I mean, this list of things are the kinds of things that are the skill sets that we should be looking for, and then combining that with some experience and a track record, and then a salary to match, and then start a search. I mean, this may take a headhunter to be able to find the right person from that standpoint.
Okay. Stan?
I actually told you I had one, now I have two based on the last 2 minutes. Can I go back? You mentioned agriculture and food innovation.
Right.
That one line stuck out to me because everything else seemed to be totally opposite of that. I'm just wondering how that fits in, because it didn't seem like that's high tech and millennial and all those things. That seemed more like where we've been. Well,
it's actually, I mean, I don't think we're talking about the food, the food enterprises of where you've been. I mean, the food movement and locally grown food and locally processed food, that's probably not the right word, but is becoming is becoming an agribusiness from that standpoint is becoming an important component of a lot of communities' economies. But it's also a lifestyle thing too from that standpoint. It's also something that does become something that is attracted and becomes attractive to a younger entrepreneurial population from that standpoint. Now, whether it's going to become a big component of your economic picture, it may not, but it can be an important component of that. Actually, the person in my office that knows more about this than probably anybody in Michigan is Megan. Mm-hmm. You know, Megan does a lot of work with food hubs and in the whole food business around all of Michigan, and I think so I'm not the most knowledgeable person to be talking about that. I know you find that hard to believe, Stan.
I'm not the most knowledgeable to ask it.
I think access to fresh food also is a big.
The second question relates to this position that you just talked about. It's not an entry level.
No.
I guess I would just ask and encourage us to use a different process than we've used in the past then. And you mentioned a headhunter. I would like to see us as a board allow you to go out and kind of lead that with people in your field who are the experts. And rather than us be involved in that, because we're not the experts in that area, bring us back a couple of candidates where we can sit in this setting and ask questions back and forth, kind of like they do with superintendents or a number of other high-profile jobs.
Sure.
You know, take us out of the equation, let you and your experts sift through the applicants and bring us back the final 3 to 5, whatever it might be.
Okay. Well, we certainly can assist you with that.
Any other, Clerk Rowe?
I know this is kind of belaboring it, and we're getting really specific here, so when is it we can get more specific? Have a really hard discussion whether it's the hiring process. The whole thing with Megan and the food stuff is intriguing. I mean, because I know so many people in my circle that go somewhere else.
Right.
And and is there a way to find out what our residents or the Ypsilanti area residents, you know, the city, us, maybe a little
Sure.
Superior, what are we spending like at Whole Foods and what are we spending at Randazzo's? Because, you know, everybody's going, they want that food and we can't get it either in the city or the township.
Right.
And so people are going to all those places, and is there a mechanism to figure that out so we can broker that to place folks and say, hey, you know, if you'd come here with that organic product, here's what all of our residents are spending in cash to go and find those products somewhere else. I know that Fresh Time has helped a little bit, but, and that, you know, it's filled that
It's
void,
not
but
big
it's
enough.
not big enough, and it's not central, you know, it's
Yeah.
kind of right on, it's filled on their
Well, you know,
edge.
what's interesting
Anyways,
and
maybe Megan can
and
help with
again,
that.
I will, Megan and I will speak more about this, and I mean, this might involve, you know, a presentation at a later working session for the board. But now I completely lost my train of thought. Oh, the fact of the matter is that the retail market study did indicate that there are dollars to be spent for food in this community, that there's a lot of dollars being exported outside your boundaries for food-related purchases. And so there is a market here. Now, you know, so what type of market is, you know, how is that market filled? I think probably Megan would know more about that than me.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay?
I do know some, like Farmers Market came up a lot
Right.
about Ypsilanti Township having their own farmers market, and I think that, and I sit through a lot of the meetings, so I feel like I hear it, but for people who don't know, Paul, we were fat and happy for 20 years. Our tax base was growing by 6% every year, and life was good until 2008.
Yeah.
That's when we had our first, very small, no one would have ever noticed decline in taxable value. But for like Karen and I and Doug, we knew that indicated something. So we fell
Right.
34 to 37% in taxable value.
Right.
I mean, I feel like we need therapy because we have really like been in a survival mode this whole time. And now we're actually, you know,
Yeah.
trying new things and doing things that we didn't think we would ever do or never had the opportunity to do. So this is a grant from Washington County, provided the first grant. The
Right.
second grant that we have received from the University of Michigan, who is also starting to be a relevant partner in Ypsilanti Township.
Yes.
And that's so encouraging.
It is.
You know, ACM, obviously, they're very much linked there, but they're also linked to the schools, to the food, to the, what do you call it, transportation. So I think it's good, and I also know that one of the common themes was that we don't have any newspapers. Now, that was in every meeting that we had, you know, or we have no way to communicate to our residents, and so we lost that as well. So
Right.
I look
Right.
forward to recovery very much.
But you have so many, there's so many bright spots, too.
I mean, we
it's-
survived.
It
We're
really is.
survivors.
Exactly.
Let it-
I mean, and there's so many bright spots, you know, about what the future holds. But the important thing is that, you know, that only comes through action, though. You know, being able to fully realize, you know, those opportunities only comes through some positive, you know, some very positive action on the part of the township and others, of course. But in this particular case, you have to be the catalyst to get others involved. And, there's 54,000 people live in this township for a reason, Now we have to find reasons for businesses to grow and new businesses to grow in this community, because there's plenty of opportunity here, seriously. And, there's some things that you have that, people are taking notice, since land prices are generally less expensive. You have great utilities, you have good accessibility, and you have 54,000 people here, and you have ACM. We have tremendous opportunity here, but the time now is to seize upon it, really.
Any other? Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Are we still doing Galt Village, Karen?
Yes. I guess, I don't know, is Denny coming, Doug, or give us that date?
I can give you an update as to what happened in
About
court,
Village.
but I don't.
Galt Village update, Doug Winters?
I think Denny may be at a neighborhood watch meeting tonight. There was a court hearing last week or so in regards to the potential sale of Galt Village from Namdar Realty to a developer out of Louisville, Kentucky. The court is going to allow that transaction to occur. There were a number of discussions in regards to the court making the new purchaser a added defendant to the case in lieu of Namdar if the sale does in fact go through. It's not scheduled until sometime in the third week of February. And after that, there'll be a number of milestones and timelines, and the court will hold the developer to a very specific set of conditions that are being worked out right now in an order that's yet to be entered by the court. Former Judge Carl Fink will continue as the receiver and continue to use those funds as allowed by the court. And the new developer intends to, I guess, it's up in the air. You may look at a possible brownfield redevelopment, demolition, redevelopment. I think right now, once that sale does go through, perhaps it would be wise to have him meet with the township development team and just see exactly what can be worked out, or actually see how this could be utilized in light of the presentation by Mr. Carlisle in regards to also some of the needs that I think that person may be open to considering. So right now, there's a new party that's going to be in charge of the property. His name is Robert Hall, I believe, from Louisville. He's met with Mike Radzik, and he's met with, I think, even Denny, as well as Dick Carlisle. I've met with him one time. So it remains to be seen whether or not he's going to put the money into it. He says he's going to, but the proof is in the pudding, as they say. But the court will maintain a tight rein over this property, and we'll know here probably within 30 days if that sale has in fact been consummated. There was nobody else trying to buy the property. That was one of the factors the court mentioned as to why he was going to approve this, because there was not a very long list of potential suitors that was interested in acquiring the property. I personally think that demolition redevelopment is still the most sensible way to proceed with that property, but if he wants to put his money into it, then we'll monitor it and continue to report back to the board as appropriate.
Any questions regarding the update on that? So basically, they're going to have new owners, and we're going to be working with them.
I think so, yes. Again, they've not yet actually transferred the property. It's supposed to be, I think, Denny said February 21st, somewhere in that area.
Okay.
He's going to provide the board with a detailed report and a court order once that's been prepared by the Mr. Ellis Freeman.
All right. So now it's time for agenda review. Did I get everything? All right. On the public comments, we'll just wait to the meeting, Ms. Craig. Consent agenda, is there any changes, additions, deletions? I made a few changes, but worked with the clerk earlier on them.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'm sorry that I didn't tell the clerk's offices earlier, but on page 3, under the work session meeting minutes, in that discussion about Megan Mason Mincock and that whole thing, right down at the bottom, it says that, it says Clerk Lovejoy Rowe asked if they changed or added definitions, and I think that should have been me.
Can't hear you.
I can't hear you either.
I'm sorry. That's
But
the
I
first
can-
time I've ever been told, no. Just under the meeting minutes, it says Clerk Lovejoy Rowe asked if they added or changed definitions, and I believe that was me and not Clerk Rowe.
You can verify that, right, Clerk Rowe? Okay. Any other comments or?
Yeah, Madam Chair, just real
Yeah.
quick, sorry. I just, a point of clarification. I had gave an email over to Clerk Rowe from a Kiko OE. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. She wanted that to be read in public comments. I didn't know if she had received it. So
What was that?
It was a public comment email that I sent to Clerk Rowe from a Kiko OE. So I just wanted-
Regarding,
she wanted it read in regards to rent increase.
I had planned to read that at what I did with it, I even have it here, read into the record. But I have to go back, I might have left it on my desk, or it's here in this pile. I did plan on doing that, yeah.
Thank you, I just wanted to double check.
Yep, got it right here. Yep. So I'm just planning on doing that at the meeting.
statements and checks, any questions regarding that? Any general legal update?
I can do that at the board meeting.
Okay. Budget amendments, are there any questions?
It's really just the only budget amendment was for the concentrate.
Media, which is, yep. The next item is the agreement for concentrate. And then number 3 is request of Mike Redzik for authorization to seek legal action to abate public nuisances for drug houses by padlocking located at 34 Johnson in the amount of $10,000. And item 4 is for public nuisances, if necessary, to abate public nuisance for 386 South Ford Boulevard, 1478 DeSoto, 908 E-Course in the amount of $30,000. Mike Redzik has come down with the flu as well, so he won't be attending the meeting, but Attorney Winters, you can answer questions regarding.
Yes, he also prepared pretty detailed memos in the board packet.
Yes, there is,
Pretty self-explanatory, but yeah, I can answer any questions.
just in case. The next item is Resolution 2018-03, which is a relocation of Ypsilanti Township voting precincts 19 and 20. Clerk Rowe?
Yeah, we've had, amongst my amazement, we've had both church and a school decided that they didn't want to have voters in their facilities. So we had to find new places, and we've come up with, for the largest precinct in the township, which was the Arbor Prep, which we were real happy there, but they weren't happy with the voters. We're going to move to the Evangelical Friends Church on Bemis Road in Tuttle Hill, the corner. And then for Precinct 20, which is at the Community Free Will Church on McKean, we're going to move that one to the Ypsilanti District Library if the board votes for the resolution. And we'll be sending out new voter cards if the board votes for it, and also closer to an actual first election, whether it's May or August, we'll send out probably just a reminder to let folks know that we'll do signs to say, you know, your location's no longer here. Probably put those up maybe a week before the election. That's no longer a voting place, and that wherever it is that they're moved to, we put it on the signs saying your new location is blah, blah, with the address.
Question? On the first mailing, Karen, you're just sending the card, or are you going to?
Yeah, what I'll do first, which we'll do, we were talking about when we're going to do that. We've actually already got the, the voter registration card, which says on there, it's on the side, you can put your place has been moved, and then here's your new card. It actually has a location. Then closer to the election, we actually, in a really envelope, if I do it like I did in the past, which worked out well, we didn't get matter of fact, I can't even recall any complaints and stuff on the ones that we've had them out. We do an envelope in a real bright red on the outside saying, very important, your voting location has changed. And then inside I do a simple direct letter saying there's an election on, whether it's going to be May or August, whenever the next election is. Here on this date, you now vote at blah, blah, blah. And then remind them when the polls are open, or remind them they can vote absentee. It's real straightforward, just short. So we do that.
So I think a postcard is more cost-effective for the second one. My suggestion. It's cheaper than to do envelopes and a letter and.
I know it's worked in the past. And we've talked about that in the past. My concern is sometimes a postcard, like everybody's using them now, whether they're furniture stores or whatever, and I'm always worried that, it'll get lost in the shuffle, whereas if it's an envelope, it's important, but so, yeah, we'll see.
Well, so we'll know when those mailings are going out, what they are.
Once we decide.
And because the board has to vote on changing this.
Yeah, we have to move anything, unless it's an emergency, it has to be done 60 days before.
Right. So
And we can no longer be at those sites, so we have no choice.
this is
Yeah.
February 6th, so May election would be fine.
Yes.
That's what I was wondering.
And actually, probably under the law, like if someone told you a few weeks before, the law says, or if it's an emergency, you could move them, but of course that's a nightmare because then you got to tell everybody just a few days. So we've got enough lead time. We're going to stagger it, do the cards, that'll be the first reminder, but not even do that like tomorrow. We'll probably wait a couple weeks on that, so people get those probably towards the end of February, 1st of March, and then about no more than 2 weeks out. We usually go 2 weeks. I would do a week, but you can't trust the mail, so we do at least 2 weeks out of the election to say, there's an election coming. Remember, your place has changed. I know we've had to move several since I've been clerk, and that's always worked. I said, we don't have very few people going to the wrong place. We don't, because we, really emphasize that. It's a plan.
Okay, and how many, obviously under 3,000 voters at each?
Yeah.
Location.
19 is the largest. It's like 20, I want to say 27 or 2,800. And then 20 is like 800, because I know one of the things we looked at, because the library didn't work in the past when Stan's precinct, which is the largest one, used to be there, but this one has 800 or 900 less voters. So we're hoping it won't be as crazy as it was. And then we've also worked out that community room that's on this side. I don't know why we never use it. We're going to try to get the flow going. You come in the front of the library and go out that door, because that's always was the jam up at the presidential only. But of course, it's going to be there. Hopefully it'll be there through another 2 years. That, if we can flow them out the side. We may have to use a different room if there's a May election. We have to, because they already have something in there, because the library's booked for a display or something that they're showing for May.
And
But both of those rooms are right off the front entrance, so.
precinct 19, then, can you get 2 precincts in there if you have to split it? Or can it grow?
Would I want
guess my
19, at the church, put 2 in there?
Well, because if you're almost at 3,000, then you're going to have to split it.
Yeah, but it's not, the growth's not on that side. The way that it's split now, all the subdivisions are not in 19. But, yeah, we probably have,
I was just thinking,
you probably could do 2. I just worried about the parking, but we'll figure, Yeah.
because you took me there too.
Yeah, we could, and you could, another ways around it too is you could possibly cut out some of the 19s and put them somewhere else.
I'm just
Instead
thinking
of
ahead.
Instead of having to, you wouldn't probably want to create, we still have a couple areas, including the library one that's, smaller. So you could cut out like a subdivision and put it over in the library. It'd still only be at 2,000.
Right.
It's only 20, it's 18 or something like that now, 19.
I was just,
Yeah.
thinking long-term. Any other questions or comments? All right, next agenda item is the resolution for the resolution for the proposition to authorize a levying of 0.5 mils to provide funding dedicated for the purchase and maintenance of vehicles, buildings, grounds, and equipment for the Ypsilanti Township Fire Department and to authorize the May election. Questions or comment? The next item is request authorization to post audio recordings of the work session and board meetings to the web, beginning with January of 2017. Clerk Rowe, Ed.
You want me to talk about it?
Well, you added it, I didn't know. I
We
didn't
had
know what to-
originally, Brenda and Supervisor Stumble had originally put together an agenda item to actually have us direct the board to direct the clerk to,
Not delete.
not to keep the, to store, not to destroy after, because the current process is after the board meeting minutes, which is the formal legal representation of what happened, document at the board meetings. Once those are actually approved at the board meeting, like tonight, probably tomorrow, we would have gotten rid of what was on the tapes. But we haven't done that since all the discussions come up about, wanting to put them on the web. So I think maybe beginning in December, November, whenever that discussion began, we've been saving them. So anyways, this, and then I know that there's been a lot of discussion, but there hasn't been, and I know I missed some meetings, but listening back at the tapes, there wasn't a final resolution or decision made on whether the board wanted to go on the web. So this is a chance for the board to express their opinion of whether we want to post those on the web, and the web could be the way that we could actually permanently store those on the server, which is a good way to store them, even probably better than us even keeping the little flash drives, because flash drives can be destroyed, you can have rain, not rain, some flooding, fire could happen and stuff, but when they're on the web, they're saved at, I think, 3 different locations permanently on the server for, pretty much, as they say, when it's out there, and you're never getting rid of it, and I think when we put things on the web, or any transactions that happen on our computers or anything, at least currently, I know they're talking about adopting a policy of actually deleting things that are trashed, which is a separate issue from the web, but I don't want to get into that. But right now, I don't think that Travis deletes anything, so anything that's ever happened is still on there, talking about a 7-year policy. But anyways, the web itself would not include that, I would suspect, but that conversation or policy was more about files or emails that people have actually trashed themselves that are still saved on our servers. So anyways, I thought this was a way with, one motion by the board if they wanted to make sure that we have a permanent recording that's not destroyed, and then also to get this stuff out there, as Trustee Ross Williams first brought forward, to be more transparent. I know I wasn't at any of those discussions. I do have concerns. I don't think there's an answer to any of them, which I think, listening to the tapes that y'all raised about, people can manipulate them, take sound bites, can change them around, but for people who just aren't, that's just something, I think, in the world that we're in, and whether it's on Twitter or whether it's on Facebook or what, that, folks can do that, and that's just part of the world that we live in. But for those who really want to know what's happening in the township, what's on our website itself, which is the purpose, is to make sure that people can know what's happening. I would prefer the video live streaming and together. I know that that's really expensive. I love what the county does, the ability to go in and hit an agenda item, and you can just go right to that, and you can see whatever, you actually can see the folks and what was said. But maybe we'll get there someday as the cost maybe becomes less and the technology makes that easier to do without having to have full-fledged professionals put that together. But so anyways, that was an attempt to honor Supervisor Stumble's request to make sure the tapes weren't being deleted. At the same time, take care of the issue. Let the board respond and whether y'all are ready to go to the web. I'm ready, so. I don't know that we're technically ready, but we're working with Travis to get there, but, So that's all.
Comments?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess, thank you for putting this up. As Clerk Rowe has said, yeah, it'd be great if we could do video, but I do think it's cost prohibitive at this point. So if I have it correct, what we're discussing is to post the audio recordings of the work sessions and board meetings to the web beginning with January 2017. Okay, so I just want to make sure that that's what we're going to be voting on right now, or do I not have that correct?
I think you got it exactly correct. It's authorization to do that and get those on the web. Of course, it's going to take, I don't know how long it's going to take Travis to figure that out. I know he's been working. I know we've pulled up all the 17. We went back the year. I know he has that because he's asked us to file them and organize them and stuff. But, and then from this point forward, we continue, or back to January of 18.
I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Yeah, somewhat. Okay, so if I have it, okay, I got that part. Okay, so we're going to be, but the second half of this is it can't be done until Travis comes back with a report, right?
No.
Yeah, no? Okay.
We've already got, he's working on the progress. So as soon as he's got it ready to load up to the server, which I think he's getting close, right, Lisa? I mean, I don't know. He's asked us to check the 2017. Supervisor Stumbo asked him to go back and pull all those tapes for 17. He's actually got those and has those available. So whatever process he has to figure out to put those on the web, it's just waiting on him to put that together. I didn't think it was a big deal, but.
Okay, and we were going to come back as a board and decide, if I have it correct, what would be the process of that process. So like whether it is that the audio recording would stay up for 2 weeks, or if it stays up,
I assumed it was
infinity,
permanent.
or permanent, or whatever it is, that the board would still have a discussion as it relates to that. Do I have that correct or no?
I guess that's what we could decide. We could do this, let's at least save the tapes that we have now, I'm not going to, I don't need a motion to destroy the tape. But keep the audio recordings, keep saying tapes, it's not even in a tape format anymore. I'm dating myself. Keep the digital format and then get them on the web. And then I guess at a later date, if you still want to talk about how long you want to keep them, I just assume, technically, really, unless you tell Travis to get rid of them, you have them forever. Because once they're on the server, it's a lot of work to go, but unless you tell them to take them off of the website, kind of like I have the minutes now, they go back to 2002 or something. 9, thank you. They were to 2, and then he wiped that out when we switched over. So I guess that's a question. That's not addressed in this agenda item, like how long you want to do that, or how long you want those tapes kept for. So I guess if we could put that on a work session agenda for another meeting.
Yeah, because I think it would be good. That way the board would have an opportunity to weigh in on what, if this is going on the web, how long they would like it to be on the web. I think that's critical.
Then we'll
for
put
board.
that on the
Madam
next
Chair.
work session.
Trustee.
I just have a question then, because the way that it's worded is request authorization to post audio recordings of the work sessions and board meetings. So if we're going to discuss at a later time how long we want them on there, I don't know that it's, do we want to post them right now, or should we just be discussing right now how long we want them on to make it all a one-time, this is what we're doing?
Yeah, I hear you.
I personally don't have strong opinions. This motion doesn't make sense if we're going to talk later about how long we want them out.
She's looking for policy on it. Monica, right? You want a
Oh, a
policy.
okay.
That will, be,
But we shouldn't post the minutes without a policy, right?
it's required, right, that we post a minute.
No, I mean, post the audio recordings until we have a policy in place about
No,
what we want to
I
do.
hear what you're saying.
yeah,
You could just postpone this until time that a policy is developed. I hear what you're saying, because they're going to, because you're right, you're going to be bringing it back again and voting on it again.
But would it be any different than the policy we already use for the regular meeting minutes that are on there since back to 2000,
Well, the minutes have to be kept permanently. That's different.
audio doesn't.
That's a statutory requirement. They are a permanent document.
I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Trustee Eldridge?
I think we're making this a little harder than it needs to be. I'm okay if you post them and they stay there forever. We can come back and talk about all the other ancillary things, but I think we need to get them up on the web so people can listen to them, and I'm okay if you put them up there and they stay for as long as they want. Travis can always move them to an archived file and keep the more current ones in place. So.
I'll just say one more thing, that's all right? Yeah, when I put this on there, I didn't even think about that, so I think that those are very valid, because it's like, do you vote on this now, and then once you decide a policy, then you come back and vote on it again? Voting on this now means as soon as he can get it ready, we'll get them up, which is to Stan's point. But, or what you want to do it all in one policy, because I assume, like Stan, that we just keep them forever, but that's not my decision, that's a board decision, yeah, because it's not governed by any statute, unlike the minutes, so.
And Madam Chair, it's not mine either. That's why I wanted to make sure that the board had weigh in on that. So, whatever policy is going to be deciding of the audio recordings on how long they stay on the web, so.
Oh, we're going to take a 3-minute break because our board meeting's going to start right after. We didn't make a decision on this yet, right?
No.
Okay, the work session ends at 6:57. Sorry, 6:59, so you better run.
Yeah. Wait, it's not stopping. Stop. Why does it keep going? I thought I did. It says key locked, and then it goes back to run. Or maybe that's just the time. Maybe it's not recording anymore. Key locked. All right, I gotta run. Yes. Okay. Then I'll turn it. Yeah, yeah.